Hey guys, it's me, Nate. Today's topic's mainly going to be on modular attachments, which are attachments that clip on and off very fast, versus direct attachments. So direct attachments basically are just attachments where you have a motor that sticks out of your robot like so, and if this is your attachment, say this hook for example, you just clip it into your motor and then you send your robot out of base to do whatever task. The modular attachments snap right on top of your robot like so, and they're typically in FLL, they're a lot faster. However, today's discussion, we're mainly going to be discussing pros and cons of each different version, so modular versus direct attachment. Remember that if you like the content I'm sharing on my channel, please subscribe to my channel as I post more content very often. And also, if you want to be a part of the giveaway at 100 subscribers that we're going to be having, make sure to stay active in my videos, so like comment in the videos, stay active in them, and then we'll be doing that giveaway at 100 subs. Like I said, it'll be a custom 3D printed object. And remember, if you think any of my information will benefit any of your friends and family and team members, then please feel free to share my channel with them. We're all trying to learn here, so share it if you think it'll benefit them in any way. Alright, so I think it's time to get started.
Alright guys, so like discussed, we are going to be discussing the modular versus direct attachments. On the right, the robot on the right is a modular robot, so it takes modular attachments. The robot on the left is a direct attachment robot. Both of these robots have won the robot award multiple times, like the Robot Game Award. So we've actually, our team, this was, the one on the left was actually one of our team's robots before we had built the modular attachment robot. So that robot, both robots, like I had mentioned, have won robot game awards for first place, and they've both been pretty successful. So let's talk about the pros and cons of both types, so modular versus direct attachment types. So we'll be discussing the pros and cons of each type. And then overall, it'll be up to you guys to decide what works best for your team, whether the pros of the modular outweigh the pros of the direct, or the pros of the direct outweigh the pros of the modular. So we'll be talking about, the pros and cons of each. Alright, so some of the pros for the direct attachment is, I have a picture on the right so you can get a better idea of what I mean by that. It's a very simple design. So like a lot of teams have this design for direct attachments. It basically, just your attachment, you build your attachment, just directly attaches right on the motor, and it's pretty straightforward. It's really easy for the students to understand how to attach their attachments. It's easy for them to reset it, and it's pretty straightforward. It's a very simple design. The next pro I would say would be the gear system. So you don't have to go through a gear system with a direct attachment set. So you can just, you have your attachment directly connected to your motor, and so there's no gears involved, and it's not as complicated. It's, once again, back to the first point, very simple design. So with no gear system, you don't have to deal with any of the gears meshing and the spacing between the gears. You don't have to deal with any of that. It just clips in and out of the motor. Another pro is it easily prototypes. So when I say that, I mean that like with, for example, I'll say modular ones. So with modular attachments, it's really hard to prototype them properly because you actually need to connect it to an entire module to, in a sense, see how it'll behave perfectly. A lot of times when you prototype, at least with our team, we attach the prototype onto a motor directly before we would, attach it onto the final modular part. In that case, we get to see how the prototype reacts, but, we really only get to see how the prototype reacts on a direct connection to the motor. So, we get to see, if it was directly connected to the motor, does this prototype work? And, we get a good gauge for that. However, it's not the same when we switch it over to a modular attachment. Because it's not connected to a motor directly, the prototype sometimes reacts a little bit differently. So when when you're prototyping, a lot of times you directly attach to the motor, and, as far as what would happen on your actual robot, you can it's pretty much the same most of the time. So if you connect your prototype onto a loose motor and then run that from the brick, and then you add your prototype onto the robot, I mean, it's going to react the same way because it's directly attached to this same type of motor. So direct attachments are easily prototypes. They resemble, the prototype data that you get is a little more direct in a sense. They prototype a lot, easier. The other thing is, you don't have to build, like I said, a modular thing with the prototypes when you're using direct attachments. The last good pro to direct attachments is that they can be reusable. So, these attachments are, it's possible to not reuse the attachment, but reuse the type, the same robot every year. It's possible that you could reuse it. If you place your motors correctly on your robot, your attachment motors, then it's definitely possible to reuse the same robot year after year. That robot in the beginning, let me just go back so you guys can see the one on the left there with the direct attachments. We did win the robot award, for first place 2 years in a row, like I had mentioned, and that one we actually reused that same robot for 2 years, and we won the robot award both years for that one, and that was a direct attachment robot. So let's talk about the pros of a modular attachment robot. So the first pro is, the one that stands out to everyone, that's used the modular attachments, is that it's extremely fast and, you have fast pit stops. So you save a lot of time when the robot comes back to base because, the modulars, kind of snap right on and off the robot very quickly. There's no like pin pulling or, you don't have to slide an axle through the motor type of thing. It's really easy. You kind of just drop it on top, or, in some cases it's like 2 pegs that you would clip into the robot to hold the module down. But it's a lot quicker than direct attachments. You guys have probably seen videos of modular attachments and seen how quick those are. So that's the most obvious pro to modular attachments. And then the next pro is it's more versatile. So modular attachments can be used in more cases, I would say. In the sense of, when I say that, I mean like direct attachments. Your motors are in the place you put them. Which kind of emphasizes where your, say, attachment has to mount and things like that. With modular attachments, you drop the module on your robot, and then you can kind of build off of that and, move your attachment around to a different location through, gears or whatever you use. And it's a little bit more, flexible when it comes to managing where your attachment is actually going to attach to. So, it's more versatile in that case. It's also, it can adapt. Basically, it can adapt to different cases a lot easier than a direct attachment can. The next, pro is it's easily reusable. So, it's a little bit more reusable than the direct attachments. The modular ones, you can easily reuse from year after year. The general idea, the concept, you can reuse year after year. And it's, you'll get about the same type of stats, I guess, in a sense. Like, it'll work kind of thing. You can reuse it, and that it'll, adapt to the playing field, in a sense. The last pro for modular attachments is, I would say, it's compatible with gears, actually. So, when I say that, it's a little bit different than the direct attachment. The direct attachment pro was that it wasn't compatible with gears, and that was because, it's a lot simpler without gears. However, when you add gears, and, most of modular attachments have gears built in them, you actually have a little bit more flexibility and, versatility because you can adjust your torque and your speed a lot easier because you can adjust your gear ratios and, adjust your torque and speed based off of that. So, that's the benefit of, the gears in modular attachments, is a lot of times you can, adjust your speed, torque, or, the position of the attachment kind of thing with those gears. So that's really nice to have at times. And it's, very beneficial when you need it. So let's talk about the cons. So direct attachment cons. So here's the cons. So obviously it's the opposite of the modular. It takes a little bit longer in the pit to add your direct attachments. There's ways to cut out time. I've actually done it in I've posted about that in a previous video with cutting time with direct attachments. But even with various methods of cutting time with direct attachments, almost always the modular is a faster pit stop for your robot. You don't have to attach anything directly onto your motor, and you kind of just drop the module on. So with direct attachments, that's one of the cons is, you have to stay in base longer to adjust the robot to the next run. Another con is limited flexibility on gear ratios. So it's pretty difficult to adjust your torque and speed when you have a direct attachment, because you have to run it through a gear system, and that gear system has to connect directly to your motor. So it's a little bit more difficult than a modular one. You have a little bit more, limit, or you have a little bit less, flexibility on the ratios when you're using direct, mainly because it's a little bit more complicated to fit in your robot, more complicated to build, things like that. So, you definitely have a lot, less flexibility on gear ratios when you use a direct attachment. Limited versatility. So basically, like I had mentioned before, with the modular attachments, you can adjust the position of your attachments, around your robot by just building onto the module. With the direct attachments, you're kind of limited to where your motors are placed most of the time. So it gives a little bit more, less versatility in that sense. It's a little bit less position, like you can't adjust the position as well, and then also it's if you do want to move the position of your attachment or something, it's pretty complicated when it's a direct attachment. So, and then lastly, one that a lot of teams experience when they use direct attachments, mainly when you're trying to build big attachments and they're direct, is weak attaching points. So a lot of times with the direct attachment, you have weak attaching points when you directly attach it to your motor, because if you run an axle through great, it just takes a lot of time to run an axle all the way through a direct motor. A lot of times teams use like snaps for the direct connections, and those tend to be they're definitely weaker. So a lot of times teams have a problem with weak attaching points when they're using direct attachments. So that's the last con to that. So let's go into the cons of the modular attachment. So the first con, which is pretty straightforward and obvious, is that it's pretty complex to build the modular attachments. So it's really complex. It takes a lot of time to be able to come up with a design for these attachments. And then also you need to keep in mind that if you don't do it correctly, say you spend 3 weeks trying to build the design and then it ends up not working, then you kind of just wasted 3 weeks of the season building something that is not going to work, kind of thing. So it's you have to balance that out on whether you want to take that chance or not, kind of thing. So that's one of the cons. Is it's pretty complex to build. You need a pretty you need to be pretty good at pretty experienced in FLL to be able to build something like that, I would say. Longer build times. So you end up typically spending a lot longer on the attachments because you have to build the module for the attachment, and then you also have to build the attachment with the module, and then connect the both of them together. So it's you kind of have to build like two attachments for every one attachment you would build for a direct, in a sense, the module and then the attachment you would have to build. So that's typically takes it takes longer to build those attachments because of that reason. And longer build times can affect your build season and your season, mainly because if you're only meeting, say, you're not meeting very often as a team, then you might not want to attempt these modular attachments because they require extended periods of time to build them. So you need to decide for your team whether you have that kind of time flexibility to put the amount of time that these modular attachments take to build. Another con is they require a high part count. So like I had mentioned before, you have to build a module for every attachment that you build. With that requires parts for your module for every attachment you build. So it ends up requiring a lot more parts for your module, just to make the module. And then you need the parts to obviously build your attachment. And then you also need the parts to connect your attachment to the module. So you end up needing like probably close to 3 times the amount of parts that you would build a regular attachment with the direct connection. So you probably end up using about 3 times more parts for modular attachments. And that can be difficult for some teams to acquire those parts. So that's one of the cons to modular attachments. The last con is that the modular attachments are very large, typically. So they can be small, but a lot of times when you build the modular attachments, when teams build them, they tend to be fairly large, the modules. And if they're not really large, they're still, they're sticking out of the side of the robot or the front of the robot, and they're still like kind of inconvenient in a sense, because they make your robot bigger, because like I said, for every attachment you need a module, and adding a module for every attachment adds a bunch of more parts to every attachment that you have, making your robot overall size bigger. So every module or attachment you have ends up being larger, pretty large, because you have to add the module, the direct connection, and then the combo to connect the both together. So with having 3 times more parts for the module, you end up having a lot larger of a attachment. And then also a lot of times teams try to do multiple things at once with the modular attachments, and they can end up making their robot very large. And when your robot's larger, it causes your programming team and your programming students to end up having more of a difficult time, because they're more limited in space that their robot can fit through, space like the paths that their robot can follow, things like that. So you need to keep all of that in mind when building the modular attachment. So that's the last con to that. So I thank you guys for watching the video. If you like the content I'm sharing, please remember to subscribe. And then, if you have any future recommendations for videos, please comment in the section below. And let me know what you guys think about modular versus direct attachments. Comment in the section what you guys think about those two differences and, the benefits of each one of those. All right, well, I'll see you guys next time.